Thank you.
That's what I love the last game.
If you were like, I'll have this to you. I think it's a you don't.
Oh, shoot, thank you for reminding me.
How does that happen? Like the game's canceled?
They sent me an email,
Okay.
but I probably should respond to it.
That's, so that ticket stuff, if you need them back to get the refund or something.
Yeah, I gotta let them check it out. You know, you call it, you get emails, it's like, I opened it, but I didn't respond.
Yeah. So, exactly, that's what it is. Well, this one's playing better all of a sudden. Two. One day she did. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Fine. So that's my driveway. Huge. Like, this is one of the biggest trees on the street, I'm sure of it. It's pretty bad, so. But, yeah, so of course I'm on a well, so not only, not only does this take out. No water. You know what?
Oh, yeah. I printed some and when I think I did. No, I did, and that's the part that I left.
The house was 30 degrees and I was like, trying not to complain, but I'm like, she sent the email, so I think we're just gonna. Hopefully everyone read them 5 days.
You know, that's right.
You got speed, and every day counts.
She sent them after she sent, I just like, everything else on that, she just resent it. Just like a
Yeah. I don't draw out of how I'm empty that, so but it's still no fun.
That's okay. I
You
sent
don't
it to
appreciate
you.
how to. It's freezing.
Okay. All right. I think we're all here, so why don't we get started? Let's see, 4:05, not bad.
I think 4:03 technically, the clock is.
Okay,
It's
all
like
right,
it's-
that's what my cell phone says. So call to order at 4:03, and we do not have a secretary yet, so should I just call roll? Or-
Sure.
Okay. So Heather Berkowitz, present. Chris Chang,
Present.
myself. Steve Hurt,
Present.
Steve Kern,
Present.
Patrick McLaughlin. Thomas Morris. Here. Roy Townsend,
Present.
Anna Cohn.
Present.
Okay. So the first thing we want to do is welcome our new members here tonight and today. And I know you were both present at the last meeting, but I know the public would be very happy to hear from probably all of us. We introduced ourselves last time, but the Zoom wasn't working. Is the Zoom working now? Okay, so why don't we start with, should we start with our new members? Let them introduce themselves first,
Sure.
or, yeah? Why don't we, okay, why don't we just go around and that way everyone will be
Yeah, we
introduced.
just go around them.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
Thomas, do you want to
I'm gonna
start?
go first. All right. My name is Tom Morris. I'm a new member. I'm an attorney at a firm called Morris and Morris in Dexter. I've been a bicycle rider for more than 55 years, and I very much enjoy trails and parks, and wanted to get involved for that reason. I live across the street from, pardon Farmington, the Dexter Huron Metro Park, so that's one of my favorites. And I lived in Farmington Hills for 30 years, and for a short time there, I was on a committee called the Non-Motorized Transportation Advisory Committee, which was maybe
come from a lifelong interest in hiking and pathways, preserves, and parks. Seemed like a good fit for taking further interest in the township. I've lived here for a year and a half. Come here via Oakland County and then from Tennessee originally. I'm a retired auto mechanic and have a degree in geography from the University of Tennessee and a lot of interest in clearing the invasive plants out of our preserves.
Heather Berkovitz, new member. I've lived in the township for 2 years now, but I grew up here. And I'm a realtor and associate broker at Trillium in Ann Arbor. And previously worked in public safety and wanted to get involved for a variety of reasons, but much like these two gentlemen, just appreciate and see the need for our parks and our pathways and various ways that we can improve them and add to them. I'm happy to be here.
Roy Townsend, I guess technically we're all new members because it's a new committee. Yeah. I was on the former TAP committee for a couple of years. Before that, I also worked with Scio Township on trails from the get-go on Zeb Road. Also on the roads committee, roads advisory committee. This is, I guess, why I'm on this committee. Some of the members are on 2 committees, so they're also appointed for this. And then my day job, I work at Washington County Parks, building the border trail project through Washington County, project manager for that. So,
My name is Chris Chang. Like Roy, I was also on TAP. I'm the appointee from the Township Planning Commission. I've been a Scio resident probably around 19 years. I gotta just figure out how old my kids are, and it tells me how long I've been in Scio Township. And I've been in the planning field for about 28 years. My day job is with the city of Ann Arbor.
And I'm Rita Glenthorne. I've been looking around with the township this is my 5th year, I figured out. I've lived in the township for it'll be 17 years. And I worked as a naturalist. I worked with the city of Ann Arbor. I worked with the schools, and I also worked with the county park system. And I love being outdoors. I love everything about being outdoors. I have, like Steve, I really want to get rid of some of these invasive plants that we have. But anyway, this is something I feel passionate about.
Steve Kern, I, like Roy and Chris, was on the TAP committee. I was on the committee for a year previously. I am a bike rider, love outdoors, and I grew up in Ann Arbor. I've lived in Scio Township for the last 3.5 years. And I've had a small business in Scio Township for 30 years. So looking forward to PPP, see what we can do.
Hi, I'm Anna Cohn. I am the Parks, Preserves, and Pathways Director. I'm very excited to collaborate with all of you. And yeah, I think 2 little things I'll share. There's snacks over there if anyone wants them. And I'll do my best to keep Zoom going smoothly. I'm noticing some little glitches already where the cameras are glitching out. So hopefully it holds with us throughout this meeting.
Okay, very good. So I guess the next thing we need to do is approve the minutes from our February 8th meeting. And I know they were sent out They're not in your packet in your hand right now. But they were sent out via email. And I don't know, did everyone get to see them?
I think. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Has everyone had a chance to see them? Are we gonna be able to approve them?
Yeah.
I guess if we haven't, if everyone has, because we did just send it out this morning or sometime today. Then we could defer it to next.
I think we're having a little squeaky part with the, our PPP email stream. Well, but maybe it just wasn't sent out, but I know when we reply all.
I actually did print them,
Oh,
if that helps, but
okay. Well, I don't know if we want to pass them around or,
there's really not much to it, but I'm
there's
happy
not
to.
much to it.
Yeah. Oh, you have the minutes, everybody?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
But I was going in an email, I could take a look, but if they got a hard copy. Sure, that's great.
There's really, it was a short meeting and there was
Yeah.
a lot that happened.
But yeah, you can take a look at them, Chris. You know, this,
Just at first glance, my last name's with a G. Other than
Oh.
that, it's misspelled, but that's okay.
Okay, well, we'll make note of that.
Misspelled, but.
So with that correction noted. Matt, should we go ahead
I'll
and,
move.
okay. And can someone second?
I'll second.
Okay, very good. All right.
You didn't vote on them.
Oh, I guess if we just say, I'll say aye. Okay, that approve.
Aye.
Anyone disapprove? The next thing we're gonna do is open up the meeting to public comments. And I would just like to remind everyone that public comments is the time for people to make their public comments, but it's not necessarily a conversation or Q&A. So we will open it up for anyone in the room or on Zoom who might like to take the, okay, well, I'll go.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Brand, resident here in Scio Township. I want to welcome the new members. Thanks for volunteering. That's commendable. Also want to say that I have formed a small group. It's over 100 people. Scio fiscally concerned residents. Our mission is to keep the Board of Trustees within the guidelines of Michigan statute and also how they spend money. We've been engaged since October. So that's one of my interests is how we spend money in general. Also, I try to knock down invasive species in my neighborhood. I do 4 lots, mine and 3 of my neighbors, the utility line. And I do a little bit on Craig Road, but it's really massive on Craig Road. So I did what I can. I'm going after the hawthorns in the spring. I'm really happy to see Rita running this meeting. At the same time, I'm disappointed that you don't want to have an interactive communication with the public. We would love to have interactive so you can hear what we think is important. Also, I had a meeting with Anna and discussed her goals. And I'm fully supportive of all those goals. she did a lot of work on her budget. And that is very clear in the budget that's out there. I mean, it specifies down to the project level, which is phenomenal for transparency. So I really appreciate that. And then I have one question, which, Dee, I hope you'll answer it. On this map that you have in your packet, it's the Trailways, Trail and Pathway Plan, and it talks about existing and potential. So one thing I noticed about this is on Zede Road from Jackson Road heading north, ending just before Pratt, it shows that this is a potential pathway. And I'm really confused by that because there is already existing sidewalks there, so it is already an existing pathway. So if you wouldn't mind telling me what your plans are regarding that section. And I know that some people think it's important to increase the sidewalk on I-94 overpass. Is that what the goal is? But some of those areas are quite dangerous with entry, exit from the freeway. So could you tell me what your plans and goals are for that? Thanks.
Like I said, this isn't really a Q&A, so I think we're gonna go on if anyone else has a comment they'd like to make.
No one on Zoom. We will be going through projects later in the meeting, and
That
I believe
might,
that'll be.
that
clear.
might answer the question, possibly. Okay. So the next thing we probably need to take care of is, Roy and I are the co-chairs of this committee right now. And one of the reasons that happened is because Roy came from TAP and I came from the Parks Advisory Board, and our two committees merged. And that there was a few reasons that happened, but because there were so few people left on the Parks Advisory Board, this seemed like a good idea at the time. We're working from the same millage, and it seems like a practical thing to do. So, but one position we do need to fill is the secretary. And I don't know if there's anyone here that's just really happy to be the serve as the secretary for our committee. That would be helpful.
Could have coach and secretaries too.
I'm sorry?
We could have coach
We
secretaries.
certainly
too.
could, right,
And the
right.
good news is you can see, since the meetings are recorded, you don't have to do, verbatim for what is taking place. Basically, you record, who, when the minutes are approved, who moved, who second, if there's action items, who does that type of stuff. List who spoke at the public meeting, as far as public comments. Those are pretty much the basics of let's think about.
Does it need to be done in real time, or can we just dictate from the recording?
Oh, that would be word for word. You mean just have a transcript of?
Well, you could go and do it after.
You can just, you can plug it into a program and it'll dictate it like super quick, and then there you go.
We're not that high tech, so I guess.
Well.
I guess that'd be.
I'd be happy to do it either way.
Okay. Does anyone else want to? I'm sorry, go ahead.
So Heather, do you want to take it on for now?
Sure.
And of course, anytime if you're not going to be at a meeting or something, you can let us know. And that way someone else can cover the minutes for that meeting.
Sure.
So I think the minutes need to go to, I'm not exactly sure because I haven't served as secretary. So I think, and don't they just have to be sent in to available on the website? Is that true?
I'm learning too. I think,
Oh, I think they have to be approved at each meeting, and then they're part of the packet, so then they are on the website.
okay, great. So I think secretary will send those to me and then I'll get them on the website.
And I think the goal would be to try to get them like a week before the next meeting, so then they could go out as part of the packet. Reading, got them done ahead of time, but we didn't get them in the packet, that's why they.
It just kind of,
So the goal would be,
I can, yeah, I mean, immediately after the meeting, I can shoot them over to you and that way, yeah, we'll be good. Did you want to finish this one?
I'll
or
do
you want
this
me to-
meeting.
Okay,
And then you have 2 examples.
okay. Sounds good.
yeah, yeah, I forgot to put the lettering by it, I guess. I don't know how important that is, but it's been a while since I served as secretary.
I believe at the last meeting, Chris brought up the possibility of a template that sounded like a
Oh,
very
yeah, that did sound
helpful
really
idea.
good.
Mhm.
I was just gonna bring that up, good point, along with, is this kind of a standard format for the minutes? I mean, this is pretty straightforward. It's not got a lot of discussion and detail in there, so these are pretty, I think you'd be able to handle these, or if there's even a format that just says what time does it start, who made motions, what the vote was, like just something to check off during the meeting. That's,
Right, because I know a lot of times what other people have run, they'll take the agenda for today's meeting, or let's say the future meeting, and then that becomes the template, so then you can just modify that. So there's certain items that there's like an action you gotta vote on, so you'll queue up, it's like, okay, this is gonna be something I need to know that, who moved, who seconded, was it all in favor, if anyone votes no, type of things. So you can just sort of take the agenda and modify it. I know that's what Patrick Sheard used to do or you can do it handwritten, whatever.
Yeah, if folks are comfortable with the minutes from the last meeting, I'll use that as a, cut and paste that as my template and then fill in.
I agree, is to try and learn the position. I've never been a secretary for a board, so I'm gonna try and learn the position so I can fill in if necessary.
I was
I'm not prepared to
a
take.
long time ago, and I've filled it a few times, but it's always a little clumsy. I always have to pull out some other minutes and go, no, wait a minute. where do I set this? But I think using the agenda is a good idea so that you're being consistent with each item. I should have put the letters, but I just didn't do it, so. But, okay, good. Also, we wanted to talk a little bit more about the,
We need to vote on this.
of course we do.
So I'll move Heather is to make a recommendation that Heather
Is approved as a secretary.
is approved as secretary for the PPP committee.
All right.
Is there a
Second.
Thomas,
yeah?
okay.
Then we need to vote on it.
I'm sorry?
Then we need to vote on it.
Oh, we have to vote on it. I'm sorry, I don't know.
That's fine, that's fine. We're all
All in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone disapprove? Okay,
Official.
that's official.
All right.
Okay, very good. All right. We wanted to continue our conversation a little bit about the Zoom protocol. My understanding that I know Zoom is very popular and it's it's a nice way for people to attend the meeting if they can't physically be here. We had some trouble with the Zoom last time and it was just one of those days where they've been having trouble with the system all day. So what we did talk about then was that we did start the meeting at like 4:05 or something and Zoom had to catch up after a while. So what we're gonna try to do is start our meetings on time and we'll just get that Zoom going if we can, if it's a problem, but we would not like to just sit and wait until Zoom is up and going. We will give every effort to carry out Zoom. Is that kind of where we are? Anna, did you want to add something to that?
That's great. I'd love to chat about our potential future outdoor meetings. Is now an okay time for that?
This is an excellent time for that.
Yeah, so we're aware that a lot of folks are new to PPP and weren't a part of TAP or Parks Advisory Board. And so there are a lot of properties to explore that folks might not know about. And so we are thinking about next month having a special meeting in which we can all go outside and it'll be open to the public and we can explore different properties and get acquainted with the properties we'll be talking about. It's very different to stand there and see it and know it versus looking at this map. So we'd like to start integrating the two. I've been in conversation to figure out how to make this as accessible as possible. And we're gonna try and have an iPhone on a stand and have Zoom going. And yeah, we'll work on making it accessible, and some properties don't actually have great cell service. So the meeting might be dropped and then whenever we're able to, we'll log right back in. So I think this is something we can pick up at our next meeting to discuss dates. I just wanted to plant that seed.
All right. Is there any other questions or discussion around that?
I just think it's a really good idea, because I think, right, you have this map of Scio, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, but when you get out there and see it, and you know, what Anna's visioning, what she wants to do, and trails and different things, or other things that are in the pros plan, it's like, oh, this is how it sort of ties together. So I think, you know, not that we're gonna meet in the field every time, but I think going out there, so it makes sense to do for, especially this type of committee, where, you know.
Yeah, especially when we're
That's a
out
great
there.
idea.
And you can see what the priorities are. You can see why is the priority, maybe it's easier to achieve or more necessary.
Right.
So,
And never gonna ask questions like, what about this, or what about that? When you're out there, it's like, oh, okay. Great idea.
okay. And we do have our Scio Outside program, which we talked about a little bit last time, and that is on the website. So we have opportunities where you can come and either get your hands dirty and help us work on trails, or you can just come and we'll do a walk through one of our sites too. So we do the first Saturday of each month. We do Saturdays in Scio. And is it at, I forgot what time we made it for now, we changed it. Is it 1?
I don't want to say anything without double checking, but
Right,
there is a Saturdays at Scio note here on the agenda. So when we get to it, we can delve into that.
okay, very good. And also, just since said that, another thing too is that you can always check the website to find out exactly where and what time is happening, so, okay. Let's move on to look at the pros map. There were some questions about that. That's attached to what you have in your phone. So, this one, I think it's good if we can review it, but I'm not sure that I'm the person that's going to lead this conversation. So I think Roy, you might be, or Anna.
So I was intending to go through different properties and projects that are included in the 24 fiscal year budget. But instead of going through the budget, which is dry and confusing, I thought we could just go project by project and familiarize ourselves with different properties. And this will be an overview because it's quite a lot of properties, and if we delved into each, we'd be here for a very long time. Up on the screens right now, I have that larger plan that we're all familiar with. And maybe I'll take a moment to talk a zebra road pathway before we dive into parks and preserves. So Zebra Road has been referred to as the backbone of Scio. My cursor is moving over it on the screen here. You'll notice that up here where my cursor is moving, where there are 3 blue dots, you can see what we call Zebra Road Phase 5, crossing over the water up to Huron River Drive, where the zebra pathway will connect to B2B. So the Zebra Road numbers that we'll be talking about a lot are Zeb 5, that stretch, and then Zeb 6, which is actually down here, these 3 dots where my cursor is moving. And Zeb 6 will take us over I-94. these are the 2 phases of Zeeb Road that construction has not yet started on, and we are in the engineering phases. The rest of Zeeb Road pathway, which I'm sure everyone's walked or driven by, is this solid blue line right outside of Township Hall, all the way to the beginning of Zeeb 5 and back down to the beginning of Zeeb 6. Definitely when we get outside and we start having some outside meetings, we can walk the Zeeb Road pathway because the numbers can be confusing. Once you start walking it, it really integrates and makes sense. Roy, Rita, did you want to add anything about Zeeb?
I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the north end. In the north end, there's a couple things left. We're down near Peters Road. It's sort of a steep embankment. There's gonna be a substantial retaining wall. Then there's gotta be a bridge over Huron River there. Then we gotta go through that's old Sweepster. It's a factory back there. It used to be called Sweepster. People have been here a long time. That's what we refer to as Sweepster. Now it's Stanley. I think the sign says Stanley with it.
Yeah.
We gotta wind through there, then eventually cross the railroad tracks and tie into the border trail. The border trail got started last fall. It was supposed to start a year ago, but Amtrak took us 18 months to get a permit from them. I'm saying we, Washington County Parks. So we'll get started again this spring and hopefully finish up. Once that's done, the good news is all 3 metro parks in Washington County, Hudson Mills, Dexter, Huron, and Delhi will be all connected with a non-motorized path border trail, which has been, 20 years in the works with, and our goal is to keep marching forward. So the north end, it'll be expensive and it's complicated because you're taking retaining walls, talking bridges, you're talking, going through that factory, trying to figure out how to get it. So I think the goal is it's a 24, 25 type project. That's why it's going to take a while to engineer, get right away, get permits, all that stuff. So that's why it's, taking a while. And those township has received some money from Representative Lazinski and the millage money. So I think you dive into the budget, there's large placeholders in these out years for those. The other piece south of there is Zeeb 6. I think what happened is it started here, went north to 5, and then 6 is sort of at the south end, which doesn't, if you look at it, it's like, why is 6 next to 1? That just was added later. I think the goal there is there's a lot of concern of the safety. When MDOT widened the Zeeb Road Bridge or did that, it put the minimum sidewalk on that bridge. So it's not very wide, probably about 8 feet wide. So some people don't feel comfortable enough. So you have the ramps there, the on and off ramps for westbound, and you got the on ramp for westbound, on and off ramp for eastbound. And then as you cross to the north, it transitions into a 5-foot wide sidewalk. The question is, do we keep it a 5-foot wide sidewalk, or does it make sense to try to widen that out to make it an 8 or 10-foot wide path? I don't think those have all been sorted out, but the goal is at least improve the safety with the ramps and the bridge. So I think that's where there's some money set aside in the out year. Could be 25 or 26 because you're dealing with MDOT and getting permits from MDOT and Federal Highway because you're dealing with interstate and the ramp and all of that stuff. So I think that's an out year project. And then it would be connected, and then the goal would be, it will connect Jackson Road, which is sort of like the core all the way up to the border trail, like Anna said. It's sort of at the backbone. And if you go back, I think that's been a project that South Township's been talking about for like 15 years. So it'd be nice to finally get that packaged up and completed, and then sort of all these other trails sort of lead off of that or come to that. So.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, if I could pull out one thing you said that is just key in the framing of all of this is that this coming fiscal year will be an engineering year. Big time. Yeah, it's nice to look forward to construction, and I think that's something I want to make clear on the website too, so that folks can really understand what's happening with Zeeb Road Pathway. There is a tab on the website, the Scio Township website for that, but I want to clarify that no construction yet on 5 and 6. We move on to, oh yeah.
But it's fairly safe to say that we've got cooperation from all of the stakeholder property owners there as far as we're engineering, but they're all on board then as far as making these connections.
I believe so. Obviously
Sweepster's
overall,
on board.
Yeah, we met with Sweepster 2 years ago. They've been supportive. We're just trying to figure out the alignment. Property owners south of Peters, I know that resident, at least it's the same person, they came to a couple public meetings. It's like, yeah, yes, please put this in, please put this in. And actually the people that currently own Sweepsters, I forget their name, he's a avid bicyclist, and he's like, that'd be great, I can actually ride to the facility he owns. I think he lives up in Dexter. So they were very supportive. So yeah, and so yeah, they're excited to finally, especially you can sort of see the end. I mean, the trail stops right now, so like it should be nice to have it all connected. So I think, yeah, the support from the.
I have a question, and this may be a question for you. What are the alternatives for dealing with the entrance and exit ramps on I-94? Has that been addressed?
That's a good question. I think that is what's happening right now in the engineering work that's being done, is figuring out the best way to have phase 6 be safe and accessible. And yeah, that's the best answer I have for you. I don't know if anyone else in the room has a better answer.
Well, I can say in Farmington Hills, we have some interchanges, and we have a crossing over 696. And it's on a road where there is no interchange. It's just a straightforward road. So it's easy to have a sidewalk with a guardrail going right across the freeway. This is a challenge to put it right where there's an interchange. I don't know how it's done. I don't recall seeing a bike path at an interchange other than on I-270, the I-275 path. I think there's one. There's more than one where you have an interchange and the bike path together, and it's difficult, I'll say that.
Yeah, I have walked it with OHM engineering reps, and it's going to be a challenge, I think, and that's why we're in the preliminary engineering phase.
Just a curiosity, the number 6 has the red line for existing sidewalk, and it has a 3 dot, not a 2 dot reference as well. So it's not, the way I see it, it's not a potential pathway, it is a footpath. So it's not only a sidewalk, it is a footpath. Any idea how those two things go together like that? Number 6, right over in other words, going right over 94. It indicates the sidewalk that we all know is there, but it's also calling it a footpath because there's 3 dots, not 2. So it's not indicated as a potential pathway. It's indicated as a footpath.
Those dots are actually.
Are there not 3 of them, or do I see it wrong?
There are 3. I think the key is referring to the size of the square.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's actually potential pathway.
Oh, okay. I guess I got.
Really, this map is a living document. So when errors are seen, please point them out. And we've struggled with how to portray everything. And I think that is a little confusing.
Oh, okay.
Lot size.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. You should probably make them circles or triangles or something different.
Yeah,
you guys can
right.
say, it's like, what is the difference? It's sort of like,
I was
fine, but you almost,
Yeah.
if you're gonna do a footpath, it seems like you shouldn't, because you could read into that, but I would think,
And there is a sidewalk down there at Jackson and Zeeb on the west side. The problem is that pedestrians are just on their own to figure out how to get across the entrance ramps
That's right.
with even people who are sympathetic to pedestrians and cyclists go at it with their foot to the floor.
I know our consultant OHM had requested MDOT do a signal study there at the eastbound on and off ramps right there closer to Jackson. They did the study. They feel it's not warranted a traffic signal. So that was one thing that would help improve safety. So that's right. Currently doesn't meet, there's a criteria when you put traffic signals in, when you don't. That one currently doesn't meet it according to MDOT. But there are other locations, just recently Huron Street over I-94 in Ypsilanti Townships. That's a place where we got ramps. Took MDOT about 50 years to do it, but they finally did do it last year. They put a pathway at an interchange. On Washington at 23, there's bicycle lanes on both sides.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. And then there's also on Ann Arbor Saline at I-94. That was done like 10 years ago. So those are some examples. It's always tricky. And from my experience, MDOT their main focus is vehicles and cars and trucks. If you're not in a car and a truck, then everyone else is sort of on their own, which is, you know, they say they're changing, but it's sort of a challenge because, yeah, trying to make it safe for people walking and on bikes when you're not in a car or a truck.
There is a fair amount of pedestrian traffic around Washtenaw and 23. I'm familiar with that interchange, and usually it's been as a motorist, and it's a sensory overload for everyone involved.
Right.
I've done it on a bicycle too.
Right.
And I live close to Skyline High School and there on Maple Road, when people come off of M14, they're going 60 miles an hour into those circles. And if you're, I mean, it's really scary.
Right.
I mean, in a car. So if you're biking, it's a little unnerving because kids do like walk and bike through there from school.
Because one thing I would, as you're on this committee, if you travel the country, you see things you think could work here, take pictures, document it. 'Cause I mean, that's how sometimes you get changes in Lansing. It's like, hey, they're doing this in Ohio or Colorado or Washington State or wherever you're at. It's like, hey, it's like, because that's what it sometimes takes, because we deal with a state DOT and federal highway, they're sometimes pretty reluctant to change. But you can say, hey, they did it at this interchange in this state. Oh, they did? We'll look at it and then we'll consider it. But if you're trying to do something that hasn't been done,
It's good to have a precedent, yeah.
then it's, yeah, you really doing that.
With Zeeb and 94, are we concerned with both the east and the west sides of Zeeb, or are we concentrating only on one side?
The west side, I think, is the focus.
The west.
Right.
The reason I ask is on the east side, you do have a traffic light on the north side of 94, and then you only have the on-ramp traffic on the south side to navigate.
At some point, then you have to find a safe way to bring them back over Zeeb to get on the pathway that's already there, which maybe that could work.
Right. But in between the bank and the on-ramp, I don't think there's room for where that culvert is there, Honey Creek.
Right.
There's no sidewalk there, so that's another. I mean, this
Oh,
it's always just, yeah, sometimes it's no easy solution. I guess years ago it was decided to stay on the west side. Ideally, you'd have stuff on both sides, but at this point, we're just trying to get improved on the west side.
Okay.
Why don't we stick with the pathways talk and sideways talk and chat about the Uplands project briefly? Our cameras are not working, so I might zip out for a second and get some tech help. Roy, would you mind facilitating the Uplands?
Annie, you want me to grab?
Oh, that'd be great, yeah. That's fine.
Kathleen, did that help answer your question about what we were going to do up there? You were
No,
talking
because
about.
you haven't addressed, there's already existing sidewalk. And you take it up so far, are you gonna rip all that out? The existing sidewalk?
Well, now you know that we still don't know what we're doing, apparently, so.
Hasn't been determined. I mean,
It hasn't been
that's why
determined.
The
engineering
looking at
work.
all, at those options, so it hasn't been determined.
Exactly.
On Uplands, I think is the first thing about this density, population density map. That sort of looks like this. This is something Chris Nordstrom put together from Carlisle Wortman, right?
Can I point out where uplands are on here?
Yes. So what this is sort of showing is, I'm sorry, at least the one I printed. If you go down the bottom, there's a key. So basically the gray means it's sort of rural. So it means there's very few people that live there. I think that's like 0 to 10 people per box. So the reason we sort of put this together is like, okay, where are the people living? What is the density? Because when you start having higher density, probably makes sense to have more pathways and connect these communities together. So that's what we sort of had Chris do this, and then we sort of like, in these higher dense areas, where are there gaps? So ideally, we have higher density in the uplands and how rich those neighborhood should be connected, because I think the number was like 1,200 residents live in this little area down here. And if you, on the other side of this map is the city of Ann Arbor. So a lot of these people live in this area and probably would want to get to the city of Ann Arbor because it's just outside the city of Ann Arbor. So you can see it's high density, which I think is between 250 and 500 and plus 500, I think is the red. So you can see it's a pretty dense little area with 1,200 people. So the goal would be, and there's some other dense areas in the township, but our main focus is down here. But I just want to put that in so we can get a relative how, why we focus on this little area in Scio Township. Because there's a lot of people there and makes sense. A lot of people walk there and it's a AATA bus service. So as part of the PROS plan, a year ago, we hired an engineering firm called Washington Engineering. They're looking at options for connecting. There's 4 subdivisions there: Upland subdivision, Meadowland subdivision, the Green subdivision, and Hometown Village. 4 subdivisions, all put in about 20 years ago, some 25, some about 20 years ago. And for whatever reason, each subdivision development put sidewalks sort of where their subdivisions stop, and they never connected the communities together. So if you go to this one, this picture here, that sort of shows, you can see the density, and at the bottom is South Church Road. And South Church Road, if you go to on the screen here, to the right, that's the city of Ann Arbor, I-94. And then if you go to the south, there's road, Oak Valley Drive, which is the Ann Arbor Library, there's soccer, there's hockey, there's Target, there's Meyer. So, in Pittsfield Township, there's a lot of development down there. So there's destinations. So ultimately, it makes sense that some of these people could ride their bike, walk. So that's a future phase. So what we're doing on this project is in here, you can see these little blue dots, is with starting at the top is, I'll go to the screen over here. Make it simple. So this is the Ravine subdivision. It goes back in here and you sort of see it's probably 200 and some homes. I don't know the number, but some number like that. They stopped their sidewalk there. On this side, they stopped their sidewalk there. Our goal would be to extend the sidewalks down to, this is Saddle Ridge Road, this is Uplands Drive. Extend that, so, and actually, we've been out there a few times. Last time we were out there, 2 moms with strollers were walking their kids here. And back in here, there's a park. Up here, there's a nature preserve. And obviously, kids live here, they all go to the same schools. So, Joy wants to see Bobby, he has to ride and walk in the street and that type of thing. The subdivision up here is Hometown Village. They actually did build their sidewalks down to the intersection, so hallelujah. But then it stops right here. So you get here and then where do you go? So our goal is bring this to the intersection. There'd be a crosswalk here. Then the sidewalk would continue down along here on the east side of Uplands Drive. We work with AATA, which is these drawings here, but these drawings are a little bit harder to follow because they're sliced into pieces. So there's a bus stop right here now. If you go out there, you have to stand in the road to catch the bus. So that means when there's snow in the shoulder, you stand on the shoulder. When there's snow on the shoulder, you stand in the road. So God bless if there's someone in a wheelchair, you'd be in your wheelchair in the road while you're waiting to catch the bus. School bus, same thing. They drop kids off here, kids walk along the road to get to their neighborhood. So our goal is there'd be a bus stop here with a pad. It's curb and gutter, sidewalk improvements, underground drainage, sidewalk down here, bus stop here, there's already one here, same thing. This would come here, a sidewalk into this neighborhood, because you notice this neighborhood, Meadowlands, they did not come out, they just, okay, I guess they thought only people walked in their neighborhood, stayed in their neighborhood, they weren't allowed to walk outside of the neighborhood. So right now we're planning here, we could do both depending on prices and everything, but the minimum, we at least wanted to get it connected out to here. And then this sidewalk would extend down to here and connect, so there'd be a bus stop here, sidewalks, so that in a crosswalk here. So this would be, so people in this subdivision don't walk over to this subdivision, to this subdivision, to this subdivision. So that's what a project. Way we're looking at potentially funding this is some money, the sidewalk improvements will come out of P3C money, pathways money. The road improvements would come out of the road millage money. So like the drainage work, the curb and gutter, because this was a project that was done, road surfacing was on the list for the road projects. 2013, 2014, I think the project was done. So there's money in that pot available for that. We're also looking at, there's a bus millage that we have in South Township. And could we take money from that pot and help fund the bus stops? So we try to slice it up 3 ways to fund it, so it's not all on, pathways, it's not on the roads, and it's not all on the bus. So if we can split it 3 ways, it's probably, a year ago, it was estimated $250,000. But for my day job, I just took bids today for a project. They came in 30% higher than estimate. Because what's happened is there's a lot of money out there because the infrastructure bill and all the different things. So people want a lot of projects done. There's not more contractors, so the prices have gone up. Obviously, labor's gone up, materials have gone up, and there's a lot of work. So it's probably going to be more than $250,000. So I think we're budgeting $350 or $400 for this type of project at this time. People say, should you wait and build it next year? Prices are probably not going to come down. So that's so if you want it done, you just got to pay what the price is today. So a lot going on. Like I said, we have these other drawings, which are more the engineering drawings. But they're sort of hard to follow. I'm happy to walk through them, but I sort of walk. This is the south part down here with it. This is where the crosswalk. This is Upland. This is Meadowlands. This is sidewalk going in. This crosswalk. Bus stop. Then you go to the next slide page. This is where it comes in. It connects in mid-block. Today I just had a discussion with Washington County Road Commission. We're gonna, Anna doesn't know this yet, but she's gonna make a request to them to look at making this a 4-way stop. Right now, this stops and that stops. This is a through road, and it's a little confusing. If you go out there, you're like, who stops here? They're gonna, we're gonna request that they look at, study that. Can we make it a 4-way stop, which would make it safer for that crossing there? So a lot of information I threw at you, so any questions?
Do the school buses share the Ann Arbor transportation?
No,
Bus stop?
the yellow school bus goes through here and ATA.
So where do the yellow school buses stop?
When I went to the box, I don't live out there, I don't really know. One day,
I can shed some light. I live in there. So it depends if it's an elementary or whether it's middle school or whether it's high school. Elementary stop at different locations. There are more stops. Middle school have fewer stops. So there's a little more walking. And the high school doesn't go there at all for either community high school or for Pioneer High School. So those kids have to take an AATA bus to get to and from school. And that's where they have to walk in the road because there aren't sidewalks or stand like he was talking about.
Most of the school kids they have to go across 94 into where the schools are. Is that right? Are the schools located across 94?
Yeah, that's right. They don't have to walk that far.
Well, I mean, the buses would take them. There's not a school in that neighborhood.
That's correct.
correct, yeah, all the schools are gonna be in the city.
So you were talking about a bus millage, Scio bus millage as part of a pot to pull from the AATA agreement, if that's what it's called, or contract that we have with them to service this area. Do they also have money to contribute to the pads and the sidewalks and things like that, or is that pulling teeth?
Well, the money they have is the money we have, you know what I'm saying? We contract with them, so we give them money to, and that's where we're doing some research on the work along Jackson and Z, where those bus stops were put in. You know, either they build them, constructed them and build the township.
Oh, okay.
Or we could include it in our project and take it out of the same pot. I guess that's what we're trying to sort through. Good question. We don't have an answer today, but I mean, AAT is not generally it's not going to do it. They're just going to bill Because they provide service, for City of Ann Arbor, the townships. And we're just, we're asking, service, we're paying for service from them. So we could just sort of take it out of our own pot of money. So.
We went out to see these areas and where the bus stop does stop, it's just like, there's nowhere to stand. It literally stands on the road.
It's a ditch, this ditch.
It's a ditch.
Ditches, so people, you can see where people are walking along the shoulder, walking along the ditch. When you go out there, you stand and you watch for a while, and then the bus will come, the city bus will come. See, people are getting on the bus and standing, in the shoulder, like I said. But then after a snow event, there's a pile of snow there, and like, okay, now where are you standing? Well, if you want to get the bus around, you stand in the
So this is kind of a pedestrian safety project more than anything.
I think, Roy, you're doing an excellent job of describing what's going on out in this neighborhood. Full disclosure, I also live out in this neighborhood, and I just took the 26 bus. If you're going from downtown, it goes right down Main Street. It goes to the park and ride lot, which is that Pioneer that picks up the high school kids. There was probably 6 or 7 of them on there today. I just took it before I got to this meeting to get home so I could drive in. And there's probably, I would say, 6 to 8 kids. I should have counted, but there's probably at least 6 to 8 kids who then get off just exactly as Roy is describing in that neighborhood. And they're walking right on the shoulder of the road. And this has been going on since this development was constructed, probably 20 years now. The bus hasn't gone out there in the last 20 years, but since the AATA has been running that way, for sure you see myself and other kids who have to walk on the shoulder. And when it is snowy out, you are walking right on the road, and it is dangerous when oncoming traffic is coming in the opposite direction. You've got these kids walking into their neighborhood, so.
The cars go pretty fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a high speed limit. I just drove out there and it's something like 35 miles an hour.
45, I think.
On part
It's
of it.
scary. It is scary. I'm telling you, just walking to the bus stops is as scary. You look back over your shoulder every time you walk into the bus stop.
So
Were you repeating the 3 sources of funding? You said bus millage and.
The path parkways and preserves fund potentially, the road sales, roads fund, township wide SAD roads, and potentially bus millage.
I'd like to add, I'm not sure if this was already stated, but at the next Board of Trustees meeting, there will be a discussion about funding sources for this project.
Interpreting this correctly, that there would be a crosswalk near the end of the blue dot going to the south.
Yeah, if you
West.
slide up or down.
Where the
Yeah,
city shop
so
is.
yeah, basically, the sidewalk's gonna come around here, then it's gonna be a crosswalk here and a bus stop here, or actually the bus stops. With the AAT, what they want now is the bus stops here and they want the crosswalks behind the bus stops. They want people to get off the bus and walk, and take the crosswalk versus walking in front of the bus. So that's where crosswalk and the bus stop would be here, then here, the bus stop would be here, crosswalk would be here.
Yes.
Has any consideration been given to extending the sidewalk down to Scio Church Road? Is that?
Yeah, so
sense or-
this is, go back to this big, so this is phase 1. The goal would be phase 2, come down here, then go to here, and then eventually connect to the city of Ann Arbor. And like I said, Oak Valley Drive's right here where there's a traffic light. Come down Oak Valley, you got the Ice Cube, you got the soccer thing, Wild World Sports, you got the library. Keep going down, you got, Target, Meyer and all that.
So those are likely destinations for kids.
Right, kids and people who live in this neighborhood, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, the other thing is, we also have another subcommittee, we're Scio Sustainability. If we're trying to encourage people to get out and walk, we gotta have ways for them to safely walk there. This development here, I think it's called Kensington or something, but actually they did put a sidewalk in so that, that's gaps filled. Obviously, we have some residential, we'll have to sort out and get, how we can make that work. But ultimately, you look at, that's where that map with the density, where there's density, you need to figure out a way to connect those communities. We really want people to walk places, and especially kids. Kids can't be hired for fun. So if you're trying, for these kids, they have friends in the other neighborhoods, they ride the bus together and say, hey, I'm gonna come to your house. how to get there, either ride the bike or walk in the street to get to those neighborhoods versus having some, it's unfortunate that this wasn't caught 20 years ago when the developments were in, but I guess we're trying to address it now. And obviously, when the millage was passed for pathways and sidewalks, I think this is what people wanted to see. I mean, I guess I look at, the gate was wanting to fix things that happened in the past, and there's an opportunity to do that, so.
Hey, Roy, generally speaking, if you're thinking of putting or extending a sidewalk down to Scio and then running from that point to Ann Arbor along Scio Church, what, generally speaking, I realize space is a concern, you not always have as much room as you want, but relatively speaking, a sidewalk is 5 feet wide, a pathway is 8 feet wide. In other words, if you want people to walk, obviously a sidewalk, but if we're also maybe trying to turn as much of that into a pathway as possible for riding, how much is that? What are the possibilities of that little section you just talked about being a pathway?
Yes, I mean, yeah,
Oh, okay.
I mean,
All right.
I'll think
Absolutely.
we sorted that out, but yeah, that's where it becomes, what do you think the use is going to be? Just walking, or are people going to be a pathway into the city?
Yeah.
What do you connect into there? So those are all the things, and then the private properties is how much room is there? What's the impact going to be for an 8-foot path versus a 5-foot sidewalk? So those are all the things as, in phase 2 and phase 3, you look at all those things and try to, someone's going to have to make those decisions, like, okay, what do we want to build here? But you really good point, yeah. Because ideally, riding bikes on sidewalks is not a great idea.
Right.
But obviously, we need to figure out something, for this, and that's what the goal of this is right now.
And there are no dedicated bike paths either along Upland and Scio Church. It's tight if you're riding your bike out there trying to get to the cube or to the library.
Yeah.
So you're on a, you got traffic whizzing by you on Scio Church Road and it gets tight.
Very good, thanks. Thanks, Roy. Thanks, Roy.
So I'll bring us back to our big map. Just for a little bit of context, our goal here is to take care of those green open spaces and then also to make sure that residents of Scio Township have access to those spaces. So sometimes it's easy to think of pathways as separate from parks and preserves. But it helps me to look at this picture and remember that we're trying to really weave everything together and enable people to access those beautiful properties. So we've touched on 2 big pathway projects, or I guess I should just say non-motorized pathway projects. And now maybe we'll delve into some park and preserve projects for this coming year. So I think I got it here. Our camera won't work while we screen share, so I'll just keep moving my cursor around to make sure people on Zoom know what we're talking about and what we're pointing to. So I'll just go through property by property and acknowledge that once we're really standing out there, it'll all make a little more sense. But first off, Marshall Park. Marshall Park is gonna also be referencing that big map that was in our agenda. Marshall Park is A on that map, kind of in the middle. Marshall Park is about 10 acres. If you've walked the Zebra Road pathway, you'll see a big boardwalk, and if you're on that boardwalk, it overlooks Marshall Park. We've just recently put in some trails at Marshall, and it has 2 beautiful reclaimed wood pavilions. You can kind of see on the screen here, a larger one and a smaller one. And we have some wheelchair accessible picnic tables that'll be going in there in the spring, along with some plantings. As well, in the budget this year for Marshall Park, we have an accessible crushed limestone loop and accessible parking. So a lot of our properties already have gravel parking lots, and that gravel, while accessible for a lot of folks, is not actually truly considered accessible according to ADA guidelines. So we'll be putting crushed limestone down so that someone in a wheelchair will actually be able to maneuver around Marshall Park. We're also have in the budget some funds for a play feature at Marshall Park. So far, this park has been a great spot for people to park, get their bikes out and start on the Z Road pathway. And in a few years, it'll be a great way to get up to the B2B or maybe go to Township Hall Park here. And it would be a great place to have some type of play feature. People on the boardwalk would look in and see it's very visible in the township. People would know that they could bring their kids there to play. So Rita and I have been in conversation with a retired designer local to the area, and we've been talking about what might a play feature look like at Marshall Park, and we'll chat with him, and we'd love to have him come speak at the next PPP meeting perhaps, or a meeting soon in the future to discuss play at Marshall Park. One last thing I'll add to close out a grant. We will be putting in a bench, some trash cans, and some recycling bins in the spring, and some planting. And those are all of the plans for Marshall. I'll scroll down here to an aerial shot of that property. You can see this white dotted line is a path that Scio Outside volunteers have been working on this past year, and it is walkable at this point. It's by no means perfectly smooth, so keep your eyes open. There are a lot of trip hazards still as we're building it. And yeah, it's a great little park. That's everything in the budget. I'll just kind of keep zooming along for the sake of time, but if you have a question or comment.
Just a quick question,
Yeah.
and this is, I'm from TAP, haven't worked with parks at all, but just out of curiosity, parking, how do you figure the amount of parking space for a given park? Anticipated usage and so on, I would imagine, but is there kind of a quick formula that you share or have that you know?
I'll defer to Rita, who was on Parks Advisory Board when the parking lots went in.
I think that we've only done a few parking lots. When we did Liberty Pond, we know that the Ann Arbor Public Schools go there to do pond study, and so we worked a little bit closely with those guys. We invited them to a meeting, and we talked about that they would need enough room to put a bus or two and turn them around. And so that parking lot was designed so that buses can get in there and parents that come along for the trip too. So it depends on the park, what we think the usage is going to be, and maybe what we could budget for now.
Sure.
We don't have all of these things designed exactly what usage the park is going to be used for when we started, but we want to open them up, and a parking lot is important. So that's one example I can give you that kind of helped us decide.
Yeah, thanks.
So.
Who do you think are the users of Marshall Park, or the potential users of Marshall Park? There are people in the neighborhood that would go there?
When I've been out there, I've interacted with people in the neighborhood. There's been an artists group out there painting before. People do park there, get on their bike and bike along the zebra pathway. So there's been variety. It's not just a neighborhood park at this point. I think because of the visibility, it's one of the few parks that folks will run across on accident.
There are people from across Zebra Road in those neighborhoods that come there to walk their dogs.
Great. Next property is just right that way where I'm pointing, Scio Township Hall Park. This is a great park that I think is one of our least known properties. It's about 30 acres. It's most frequented by the Scio Flyers, which is a group of folks who go out and fly model airplanes out there. There is a walking loop, which can be seen in this picture right here, just a mowed grass walking loop that the Scio Flyers are maintaining. It is open to the public, and the walking loop just kind of circles the entire property. I'll scroll down here to the aerial view. So this is Township Hall. This is our parking lot. And then this white dotted line is that walking loop. So you walk and you see the fire station, and you keep walking, you see the Montessori Day School. And then here we have a big field. That's where the Scio Flyers fly. They've been flying there for roughly 30 years. If you look in the paperwork, we've had a lease with them since 2010, but they've been there much longer. And Rita and I actually just finished up a meeting with Scio Flyers. They have a lease with the township. And we've been in collaboration with them to figure out how to keep them there. They're an asset. They use the park really frequently and take amazing care of it. How can we keep them there flying and also make this open to the public and have it be safe and fun that you get to go see airplanes in the sky? Pretty neat. This year in the budget, we have budgeted accessible pathways, which will kind of be a theme as I go through properties. We want to make sure that these properties are really accessible for residents, as Scio residents are paying for them, and because nature is for everybody. And we want to make sure that we're walking the walk, I guess, or I should say, I guess that's not really an accessible way to phrase that. Let me say this, we want to really put our money where our mouth is, I suppose, and truly make these properties accessible. So we'll have the crushed limestone loop around here. We'll also have, we have the parking lot already, a big parking lot, which I think is worth noting. If we wanted to have a large event, this is the park where we would have it because we have enough parking. All of our other lots are about 6 spaces.
Yeah.
So if we ever wanted to do movies in the park in the future or something to really bring community together, this would be a great location. We've discussed with the Flyers that this is Flyers Field, so they have priority. And at the same time, when they're not flying, this is a beautiful, flat, open field, which is unique for our properties. And we have plans to make that known to the public that people can come play on this field. And the Flyers want to make the Flyers know that and like welcome that the community will come play there in the future. That's all I have on Township Hall Park. Shall I move on? Good to go? All right, Sloan Preserve. Beautiful property. I cannot wait to all walk out here together. Sloan Preserve has kind of 2 main branches of trails. One of them goes down to, well, they both actually go down to Mill Creek. There's a seasonal crossing here you can see in this picture. It's a very beautiful property. There's some beaver activity, a lot of beautiful cottonwoods. It's about 50 acres. Here's the aerial view. Sloan has that same parking lot, about 6 cars. Could be squeezed in there. And these are the 2 branches, the white dots I'm talking about. We don't have any big projects in Sloan for this fiscal year. We will, however, have Scio outside volunteer days out there to maintain the paths, make sure that they're accessible and safe and fun. And also in the budget for this fiscal year, we have interns, the same internship that I did along with another intern in 2021. Natural features management interns, because this is a property that we haven't yet assessed what a flora and fauna is really out there. And that's an important part of being a responsible land steward, is truly knowing what's out there before you start any type of development. So hopefully that will be going on at Sloan this coming year. I'll move on to Van Curler. Van Curler is big, 90 acres. And there's no parking lot at Van Curler currently. And there are no township-made trails. There are trails from residents that have explored the land in the past, as well as deer trails. Van Curler is unique in that it's so big. Also in that it has big Norway spruce stands and open fields and kind of wet areas and dry high areas. It's really diverse. So this coming fiscal year at Van Curler, we have a small parking lot going in at the north section up here by Joy Road. And when I say we have it, I mean, it's in the budget, and hopefully that will be a project that gets approved and that we can start on. We have already done some work up here in clearing an area to be the parking lot. So that's begun. Down here on the south at Huron River Drive, we're collaborating with the Metro Park to have a little bit of a road crossing heading up to Van Curler. So folks could come into the Metro Park, park in their big parking lot, and then cross over here on River Drive into Van Curler from the south. Roy, I know you have been involved in those conversations. Do you have anything to add on that southern access point?
No, I guess the other thing is it's right where the border crosses is right where it peel off. So if you're familiar with Dexter here on Metro Park, there's a bridge there right by the parking lot. The one bridge there, that's where the trail would sort of peel off there. And like a year ago, they put in like a gravel parking lot out there in the field because the park now gets so much use. Yes, I think so.
Like a trailer parking lot.
Yeah, the trailer parking lot, exactly. You wrap around there and then go across here in River Drive. So they're working with Metro Parks and trying to figure out, so that we wouldn't have to build parking. We'd use them. Obviously, then people would have to pay to get there, but you could ride on the border and get there too, and maybe probably have parking place you can put your bike and walk in there. Sort of reminds me of Bird Hills. If you've been to Bird Hills in the city of Ann Arbor, because it's a lot of topography. And it's gorgeous out there, because I mean, I always wondered, like, because I didn't even know that township owned this property. And so I thought it was privately owned. It's like, oh no, they've owned it for like 10 years. But the goal is like, we can get people out there. So I think the goal is to get the parking lot from Joy Road end and actually have access to the south end. So it is, it's 90 acres and connects to the Metro Park and connects to the border. And so I think it'd be really nice once we can get it all and eventually get some other walking trails in there. Hopefully we can, like a lot of these things, they take time, especially when you
taken a
deal.
long time to get
When you're
that
working with other
started.
agencies, people that say like we're building trails, the board trail. Generally, it takes like 4 years from starting on engineering, permitting, construction. So on Z Road, those type of things, don't be surprised. You'll see stuff in the budget. It's like, engineering. Well, it's going to take some time. Sometimes it's quicker, but sometimes you got to get permits from the state of Michigan, from Eagle, and different things. It's just the process of getting those things. So it's sort of like, getting patient sometimes on this stuff. It's like, and it's talking about it, which is great. That's the vision. Like, that's what this pros plan sort of was the vision. So like, okay, now how can we make it happen? And hopefully, you're always evolving. It's like, okay, Marshall's on and these things are happening, but just be patient because it does take time when you got to get, and Anna's trying to manage a lot of these projects. It also is a challenge too.
Well, now we have Anna and we have millage to work with.
Right, so
And things are actually moving along a little faster, a lot faster.
Right.
I have a comment about Van Curler. I just walked it. And it's a beautiful place to walk. The trails are kind of just deer trails, basically. I don't think there's many human-made trails in there. There's some old roads. Up at the north, we have Webster Township. And the thought occurred to me that if it would be a benefit to residents of Webster Township, but not so much Scio Township, to have an access here, a nice path that went through, maybe just a crude path, not even maintained, just a trail that people could walk, possibly ride a bike to get down to Dexter Huron Metro Park. But as I was walking this, I thought this would be really good for people in Webster Township. Has any thought been given to talking to Webster Township and say, hey, this would really benefit your residents. Why don't you pay for maintaining a trail across our property? And then we can use it too. That's kind of a vague idea I got spending an hour walking around there. That's all I have to show for my hour.
And one thing that happened with this ice storm, the first one, there's a large spruce standing
All the
up
spruces
there.
must have been.
And
decimated.
it just looks like pickup sticks, but you can't even find the trail anymore.
We'll have to take a look at that. I have a spruce
So-
that lost about a ton or two of branches on my yard.
But there are trails up there. There's snowmobile trails from the neighbors. So there were pretty good trails up there.
Oh.
But now it's like, we're gonna have to do some cleaning.
Well, I managed to find enough of a trail to walk, but I
Sure.
figured it would be a challenge to ride a mountain bike.
And this is one where the Parks Advisory Board, we did go out and we did find where the boundaries are. but they need to be marked because it's easy to get lost in there and end up on someone else's property. Steve knows that too.
That is true.
It's very easy to wander off. And so we do need to get out there and start marking. I think that would be a good idea on that one before we open it, so that when it is, the parking lot is done and we do open it up and make trails, people have an idea of, because it's a funny shape too. So it can be a little confusing.
Yeah, I think also, I don't think I mentioned this, but the natural features interns as well, should they be approved, we'll be assessing this property because it is so big. And I don't think we've really assessed every inch of it, even though folks have walked it individually. And then I'll just kind of earmark this idea of biking and mountain biking. I know there's been a lot of like to bike or not to bike conversations in Parks Advisory Board. So maybe that's a future conversation we can have, because people do want to be biking on properties. And I believe currently our rules say no biking. Is that right, Rita?
Well, we haven't encouraged it because it's a preserve. And so we know that along with biking comes a lot of erosion when you bring those bikes in. So it's just something that has to be thrown around a little bit. You know, you don't want to be so restrictive, but still you want it is a preserve. So that's just a conversation for another day, many days. So.
We have West Scio Preserve. This is where one of the properties in which 2 interns did natural features management work in 2021. We know that this property is super rich in bird population. You'll see birders out there all the time and you'll ask them, how did you know about this property? And they'll find it on eBird, a birding app from Cornell University. People will like mark that they've been seeing birds, and then other folks will get excited and they'll come out. So this property has a cool community draw to it. And for that reason, we really want to take care of this property. It unfortunately has some invasive species coming in, like garlic mustard and multiflora rose and knotweed. And so this is high priority for Scio outside this coming spring and summer to hopefully get those populations diminished, if not eradicated, to take care of this property. And we don't have anything in the budget this year for this coming year for West Scio, but we'll be working out there. And here's the aerial of that property. It is kind of puzzle pieced together. And at this point, it's quite large. I think 200 acres, yeah, 217 acres. And it's very wet, mixed hardwood, lots of silver maples. Don't go when the mosquitoes are out. It's dangerous.
Or just wear a screen.
Yeah.
And this is another one that needs the boundaries to be marked at some point. We really have to take that on.
Okay, we have 2 more. Liberty Pond Nature Area. This is a beautiful 50-acre site with a very fascinating history. To put it briefly, most of the topsoil was scraped off and sold. And so ecologically speaking, it's horrific. However, quite interesting because you can see pretty much every invasive species that's going to be here will be popping up on this property to learn from it. And there's a big human-made pond here from that topsoil operation. So Ann Arbor School District will come down and do pond surveys, and this is the property Rita was talking about that is bus accessible for school groups. Another thing I'll note about this property, even though ecologically it's a bit of a nightmare, there are tons of birds, and there's even some species like trumpeter swans, which I forget now. They're definitely rare, but I think they actually might be, I'll just say they're rare for now. They might be, they are protected through the Migratory Bird Act, but there's really interesting birds here. We did a breeding bird survey here in 2021, and there are lots of nests in the summer when we were out there, and it's an important property to take care of. But restoring it would be an awful lot of work. I think the main focus on this property is trails so that residents can come out and walk their dogs and enjoy the pond. I think another focus for us could be safety around that pond and signage to make sure that folks are staying safe. That hasn't been addressed quite yet.
And I'll just say that I know that the neighbors have taken a lot of liberties with this pond, with this area, and they cut the grass, they mow the lawn where they want the paths to walk their dogs already. And we've been trying to, Anna and I've been trying to sort of work with them a little bit and sort of bring them in, and they want to be stewards, but anytime we put something out there, things kind of disappear. They kind of would like to keep it to themselves. So it's touch and go.
I'll give you a little bit of history on this parcel. So gentleman named Ernie Bates ran a topsoil operation. So that's why it's no topsoil, because he stripped all the topsoil and was selling it. Township, because he was doing it sort of illegally, township took him to court, was in court for multiple years. They ended up buying the parcel. So that's why it's sort of weird how, because rather than going to court and winning, and then he moved his operation to Lima Township and sort of proceeded to do the same thing. Bought the parcel, started stripping topsoil, because that's what we did, sold topsoil for a living. It's very interesting how this situation now is turned into parking. Now it's an opportunity, but I remember back in the days when the whole court hearings, all that type of stuff, because he was trucking illegally, doing anything, you know, he never got permits for anything. He just dug the pond up, he got a permit for that, and just sold topsoil. Now, 10, 20 years later, now it's become a park, which is good, at least, you know, rather than the illegal trucking operation with topsoil.
And he was bringing in topsoil from other places, and you can see just these huge mounds with trees growing out of them, just where he just piled up soil.
All right, last property we'll discuss briefly is Douglas David Marshall Preserve. This was recently acquired, 2022, 47 acres. No parking lot currently, however, that is in the budget for this coming fiscal year, and it will be done in congruence with the North Van Curler parking lot, because they're pretty close, and it will be the same kind of 6-car parking lot with a little kiosk. There are not any trails currently, if I'm remembering correctly. There's like deer trails, but that's about it. And it's wooded, and then it opens up into this kind of grassy area, just like that. This is the shape.
Again, a crazy shape. You need some boundary markers, and we did kind of go through and clear out somewhat of a walk to see if we could get back to the field, but very minimal work done there.
We made it through all the properties. It's so amazing that Scio Township has been able to secure and protect this many properties.
Okay. Anna, did you want to talk a little bit more about the Scio outside?
I would love to briefly mention that on our website, which I have up on the screen here, we have a Scio outside page. Let me make it a little bigger. There you go. So Rita and I, before winter time, started Scio Outside, which is our community engagement program. Rita has 30 plus years as a naturalist and educator, is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I, prior to working this job, was working as a naturalist and educator for, I don't know, I guess a decade at this point. Not 30, but I'm getting there. And so we feel really passionate about getting folks outside and helping people feel like they can truly contribute to these properties. So on the website, you can see we already have some spring events planned. I would super appreciate some help reaching out into the community. And I think PPP is a great place to start. I know we all have our networks. If you have like a church group or a Boy Scout group or a running club, whatever you might be involved with, if you wanted to come to one of these events as a group or plan a whole event just for your group, maybe your group wants to build something like birdhouses and you want to create an event through Scio Outside, please reach out to myself or Rita and we'll get that going. Also, if you're a PPP member passionate about community engagement and you have some time in your life and you want to meet with Rita and I and plan these events, please do. Also, if you're a resident not on PPP and you're interested to attend or even get involved in planning, please reach out. Rita, do you want to share anything else about Scio outside?
Probably not, just because you're kind of running late here, so we can talk about it later. All right, okay, we can open up again for public comment, about 5 minutes. If anyone has anything they want to say, either in the room or on Zoom.
Oh, Jonathan Greenberg has a hand up. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, well, I guess we can make a motion to adjourn.
One quick thing. Thank Anna for going through all these. I think
Yes.
it's real informative. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Anna.
Obviously, as you get out to the sites, but you did a great job describing them and, you know, what we're trying to get there.
Mhm.
It is sort of, you know, so it is sort of surprising, without a parks millage, they have acquired a lot of parks over the years, the township, and so it's interesting now that there's actually money available, we can actually make improvements, so it's exciting time, before we just acquired the land and just like bankroll just sat there, but now it's actually, okay, now we can actually give people access to this land that we've acquired over the last decade or so, exciting times.
Mhm. Yeah, between Anna and the village, things have really started moving forward. It's a lot more fun to sit at the table. So we can adjourn. It is 5:31.
Once you're adjourned,
Someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.